Hi there. I'm Ellen Johnson. I am the owner of Serendipity Needleworks and the founder of the Stitchers Club, and I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon as your host for another episode of Needlepoint TV. It is Thursday, May the 7th, 2020, and I'm delighted to have you here with me, and I hope that you'll say hello and share where you're watching from, because it's always fun for me to see that. And of course, as always, if you can see me and hear me okay, give me a thumbs up, because it's always great to know that the technology is working like it's supposed to as well. So I have got lots of fun things to share with you this afternoon. We're going to chat a little bit about the fourth destination on the 2020 Spring Threadventure Garden Tour. So I hope you are ready to dive into our destination today with me. I am delighted to see, look at all these wonderful people popping in. We've got Susan and Pamela and Alice and another Susan and Emily and Sarah and Audrey. So it's great. Thank you all for joining me here. We'll give everybody just a minute or two to find us, because I know sometimes you have to scroll through and find me live, and so it just takes a little bit of time sometimes for people to find where we are. If you happen to be watching this as a recording, please make sure that you share with us where you're watching from then too, because I do go back and keep an eye on the comments. If you have a question during the time that we're here together, please do type those in the comments too, and I will do my best to answer those while we're together live. Or if you're watching this as a recording, then of course I'll come back and try and get those questions answered for you as soon as possible. Things have been a little crazy around here for the past few weeks, as it has been, I'm sure, wherever you may be watching from. Life is just a little topsy-turvy, so I'm not able to get back and answer things as quickly as I have been maybe in the past, because we have so many things happening. But I will do my dead level best to get in there and get those answered for you, like I said, as quickly as possible. So, well, let's see who all we have. Oh my goodness, people still popping on. Okay. Let's see. We have, goodness gracious, people from, I see, Southwest Michigan, New Jersey, Indiana, Kansas, Texas, Virginia, Australia, more Texas, California, Kentucky. So it's great. We've got people from all over the place joining us here. And isn't that just the wonder of technology, that we can be together here, and it doesn't matter where you are on the globe, but thanks to Facebook, we can all get together and share our love of needlepoint here with one another. So, all righty. So today we'll just go ahead and get started. If you've been watching or following along, we've been doing the Spring Threadventure. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Threadventure is, and that's thread like you stitch with, and then venture added on to the end of it, is a virtual vacation, a virtual needlepoint vacation. And what I do is I try to pick a theme, and then over the course of a few weeks, I'll share different thread and stitch combinations that you can use for a variety of design components on your needlepoint canvases. So, for example, we started our tour. Let me stop and think. Wait, where did we start our tour? Oh, we started our tour in South Florida, and the design component that we chatted about was palm trees. And so I shared a stitch that you could use to stitch the palm trees on your needlepoint canvases if you happen to have one that has a palm tree on it. And then the next week we explored we went to Magnolia Plantation in South Carolina, and we explored flowering shrubs. And I shared a stitch that you could use on a canvas that you might have that maybe has azaleas or some other type of flowering shrub, camellias, something like that. Then last week we visited Columbus, Ohio, the Topiary Garden. And while we were there, of course, we looked at topiaries, or green shrubbery. So the stitch that I shared with everyone last week over on the Serendipity Needleworks website was a stitch that you could use on green shrubs or any type of foliage that you might have on your needlepoint canvas. And this week we're doing a deep dive into trees, or tree tops specifically. And we're visiting Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania, not too terribly far from Philadelphia. I know we had several people who have already visited Longwood Gardens in person, and now, after having learned more about it, I am so so excited about the potential for going to visit it myself because it looks like a really neat place. I know we have a couple of members in the Stitchers Club who have particularly close ties to it, and so it's always a lot of fun to have those connections. And I want to of course, encourage you to make sure that you go back if you haven't seen all of the blog posts. Make sure you go back to the website and start at the beginning and work your way through. We still have 3 weeks beyond this one, so we have we have 3 more weeks to go. I'm not going to tell where we're going. That's the surprise part. That's the adventure part. But I will tell you that there are some really beautiful places, although I've not been to any of them. But from my research and delving into learning more about each and every one of them, they're really some very special places. So if you're like me, you're creating your own real life bucket list of gardens to visit once things get back more to normal and we can get on the road and go and do some road trips, some fun road trips. So. All right, so I will go ahead and share my screen with you so you can see today's post, and this will be something that will hopefully help those of you who haven't, let me find where's the share screen thing. Okay, wait, let me get the right place, and then we'll share the screen so that you'll know where you go to find the information. All right, so let's see. We have, I want to go through here really quickly before I start too. We have, okay, so we've got more wonderful people who have joined us, and I'll see if there are any questions. I don't see any yet, but I do see some folks who are sharing that they actually got to go and visit Longwood Gardens themselves, which is such a treat. So we'd love to get your input on it. And what your favorite part of it was, because that's always fun to get some other people's perspective on things. So you can see here we have a picture. This is actually the Italian water garden, and this was something that the owner of the property. Well, I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me go down here. Let's scroll down here. You can see this is actually the conservatory, and so there are a lot of indoor gardens and displays at Longwood and a lot of outdoor ones as well. So it's a really neat place where they do a lot of exhibits that are created to inspire gardeners from all around the U.S. and actually I'm sure all around the world to create different types of garden settings at their own homes. And that's one of the really cool things I'm going to share with y'all. Well, here, let me do this really quickly. So this is, I'm going to go back and find, they have a lot of great information about the actual history of the garden. But so you can go to, I'm just scrolling backwards here. So they have a lot of educational information on the website. This is their website. So to go to their homepage, this is where you go. And so you can see that they have educational information there that you can, a class that you can take that's free on how to create a bonsai tree. And we don't want to start the video. And so wait a minute, I'm getting a couple of people who have made comments here. Hang on one second. Leanne says for some reason the website is not coming up. I can see the title head but not the pictures. Okay, so what I probably need to do, I'm not sure, I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. Let's back up because I forgot I'm not on Zoom. So let me back up, and we're going to go back to their main website, and then we're going to go, let's go back to my main website. So you can go to, what I'll do is I'll share here inside, let me do this. I'll share this with you so that you can go and maybe check it out. I'll put the website address for Longwood in the comments, and then you can go there, and if you're interested in learning or exploring a little bit more about the garden itself, then you can go and visit their website and just peruse around or peruse through and take a peek. because they have all kinds of interesting information there. Free classes that are on video, great information just about the garden itself. So anyway, it just is it's just a really, really neat place. So, all right, let's see. Okay, so we're getting, thank goodness, we've got people who are saying that we're okay on their end. All right, so you can see now, this is the main conservatory, and as you scroll down, there's a little bit of history here that you can see, and as you scroll down, you'll find that there was a fella by the name of Pierre DuPont, and I'll go back to myself. You can read through the post and find out that there was a fella by the name of Pierre DuPont who purchased the property that Longwood Gardens is on now, way back in 1906. But the actual, I guess, even farther back than that, the property itself was purchased by a fellow by the last name of Pierce. I think his name was George Pierce, if I'm remembering correctly. And he purchased this land from some of William Penn's folks and established a farm. And he and his son cleared the land, and then they began to farm it. And his son built a home there, a brick home, I want to say around 1730. And that brick home is actually still in existence on the grounds, and it's what Pierre DuPont added onto to create the conservatory. So he added a wing onto the house to create this conservatory, and then of course things have been added onto throughout the past more than 100 years when he first took ownership of it. What happened was the grandsons of Joshua Pierce, I think that's right, Joshua Pierce, he had twin grandsons, and his twin grandsons became very interested in natural history and planted a variety of trees that they had collected from a variety of different sources, local botanists and people from around the area. In fact, the trees that were in their arboretum that they planted, they collected from up and down the eastern seaboard. And so they planted these trees. This arboretum was basically 15 acres to begin with, and then it continued to grow. And then as time passed, people that inherited the property lost interest in that, and by the time and this was in the mid-1850s, so by the time the early 1900s had rolled around, the property had changed hands multiple times. And so what ended up happening was the people that owned the property were getting ready to have the trees clear cut, and they had contracted with a local lumber mill to come in and clear cut 41 acres of trees, of these unbelievable specimens of trees from all over the eastern coast of the U.S. and even some that were from around the world that these young men had managed to get their hands on. So in order to save the trees, Pierre DuPont bought the property, and then he stopped them from cutting the trees, and then began to develop a little bit of an interest in doing some of the garden work himself. They didn't obviously cut those trees, and they're still there. I'm sure some of them have died because trees are just like people; they have a lifespan. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And in addition to that, his very first foray into gardening was he did a flower garden. He planted a flower garden. He didn't really have a specific plan when he began to do this gardening work, but he did do things in phases or stages. He'd just get an idea and venture forth with it, and then complete that project, and then get another idea and venture forth with it. So he's the one that of all the people whose, I guess, thumbprint you would see on the property, it's his that has been the most lasting. And like I said, it's just a really cool place, and there's so many interesting things to see and experience there. But we had only the opportunity to choose one, so I chose treetops, and that's what I shared with you all today is the stitch for treetops. And I'm going to now pop back over to the website so that you can see. Let's see. Oh, there's a cute canvas. I love this canvas from Maggie and Company. It's called Dottie's Garden, and it's a really fun canvas that you could use this stitch on and a lot of other stitches. For those of you that are in the Stitchers Club, you're getting some bonus stitches, and I've I'll be sharing those with you this afternoon after we get finished here and we have our canvas call at 4 o'clock. But the Damask Stitch is the stitch that's over on the Serendipity Needleworks website, and there is the stitch diagram, and I want to make sure that I share my stitch sample with you too. Let me find it here. I've got it. This is a really cool stitch. Now the stitch sample that I did, you have two options, or a couple of options at least. I want to make sure that you're aware of those. One is that you can work this. You'll see that you have numbers on the diagram as well as letters, and you can work this as a two-step stitch or as a one-step stitch. So if you choose to use this as a one-step stitch, you're going to be stitching it in one thread. So if you're going to do that, then you would just work from 1 to 2 and then do A to B, then 3 to 4, and then C to D, and then 5 to 6, and continue along in that manner. If you were doing this in 2 threads, say maybe you had 2 different shades of green, or if you were using 2 different textures, then you would work the long stitches first and then come back and work the short stitches as you see them illustrated here. Your long stitches are numbered and your short stitches are designated by letters. And so you would work your 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 8, and then come back and fill in with A to B, C to D, E to F, and so on. Now one thing I'd like for you to also notice on this diagram is that your long stitches share a hole with the short stitches, and then vice versa. So the long stitches the short stitches in the first row share a hole with the long stitches in the second row, and the long stitches in the first row share a hole with the short stitches in the second row. So it's easy once you get your first row onto your canvas. It's easy peasy to stitch this, to get the pattern established and then fly with it. You don't even have to look at your stitch diagram. So it's a really easy stitch to work. You can create some very interesting looks with this stitch by changing the slant or the direction of the slant. So instead of having them angled down toward the right, you could reverse that and have them angled toward the left, and you could create some really interesting movement with this stitch by doing that. So by altering the slant of the stitches, you can definitely create something that has a lot more visual interest than if you have everything going in the same direction. Something that you also need to know, obviously this is a stitch that's kind of a medium-sized stitch because you're working over 4 canvas threads at one point. So with this particular portion, the long stitch, you're counting over 4 canvas. Well, let's count down first. So you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this stitch is, like I said, a medium-sized stitch, so you're going to want to have a relatively decent-sized space to put it in. Otherwise, you're going to lose the effect. You won't get the desired effect. As I always say, you need to be able to get 3 repeats of the stitch in the space in order for it to be a good fit. If you can't get 3 repeats, then the stitch is too big. You need to try something smaller. So this is one that like I said, it's just a really interesting stitch, and I used Threadworks over-dyed cotton floss. I'm going to come back to camera now, and let me do this so I can see things a little bit better. So I used Threadworks over-dyed floss. This is the one that I chose to use. It is called Tropical, and the number on it is 11611. It's a really good green. It's got a variety of greens in it, so it's a monochromatic, whoops, you can't see that. It's a monochromatic green, but there is a pretty good bit of variegation in it. So let me show you my stitch sample. It's this one. I'm going to have to point with my pen. It's this one right here. So you can see that you don't get full coverage with this stitch using 4 strands. I used 4 strands, and this would give you a really nice effect if you had a painted canvas. So if you have a tree like we saw over on the blog post, the Dottie's Garden by Maggie and Company, that would be, you could use this stitch, and because the tree is painted a solid green, then this stitch would be a real interesting stitch to use to give one of those trees some nice texture. You don't have to, You could change the slant. You don't have to stitch it in the direction that I have it slanted on, on the diagram or on my canvas here. You could switch the slant to the opposite direction, and it'd be just as equally effective and correct. That's the beauty of a lot of these canvas embroidery stitches. You can just alter the slant, or you can play around with, you can turn your canvas and stitch it, with your canvas turned, and it gives a completely different look. So, you have all kinds of flexibility. That's where the artistic part comes into play. You have that flexibility, and you can stitch it however you want to get the effect that you're trying to achieve. All right, so Alice says that she likes this stitch for a background, and that's a very interesting application for it. So yeah, that's another good use for it too. Thank you for sharing that, Alice. And then we have, let's see, Emily says she's done this stitch in the watercolor green that is variegated, and it looks really nice. So yeah, you could definitely do this stitch in watercolors. That's another terrific thread that you can use for different types of greenery. Karen Collection has, let me think. Now, you've got Wildflowers, which is a single strand cotton that's very thin, so you'd have to use multiple strands if you wanted to have a full coverage effect. It's really, to me, I use it more for counting cross stitch than I do for needlepoint, but it can be used for needlepoint. And then they also have a thread called Water Lilies, which is silk. It's a stranded silk, and I think it has 12, I'm pretty sure it has 12 strands. And then there's Watercolors, which is a 3-ply divisible pearl cotton, Pima cotton. And it's, I don't have it handy. I don't have it handy, but anyway, it comes in some really pretty colors too. So Threadworks has, and that's what this is. This is the Threadworks overdyed floss. So I used the 4 strands of this. Now there's not a ton of yardage on these. There's only 5 yards on a card. So if you have a stitch that's going to eat up a lot of thread, you're going to want to make sure that you're going to get a lot, or at least enough. You want to make sure that you buy enough. And the best way to do that is to measure your space that you have, and there's a formula for it. So you measure the area that you're trying to cover, and then you multiply that. And the way I usually do this is multiply times 1.5, and then divide by the number of yards on the skein, and that should give you how many you need, how many yards you're going to need. So if you take, say, if you have something, and I've got my phone here, so I can use this as a calculator real quick. So if I had an area that was 2 by 3, then that's 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 1.5 is 9. So I know that I'm going to need 9 yards to work an area in basket weave, and then I'm going to divide that by 5. And that means I'm going to need 1.8 skeins of this, which you can't buy 0.8 of. So I would have to have 2 skeins of that to work an area in basket weave. Now, that's if you're using all of the strands. Understand that if you're only using 4, and that there are 6, because this is a 6-strand divisible thread, you've got a little bit of wiggle room there, but you're still going to need more than 1. You're not going to be able to get that out of just 1. So what I always do once I've made that calculation too is I always, if I'm doing a decorative stitch, I always add 30%. And if I'm doing a tent stitch or a basket weave, then I add between 15 and 20% just to be on the safe side. And as I always say, if you have a shop that you work with to purchase your threads from that has a lenient return policy, then I would suggest erring on the side of caution and getting at least 1 extra skein. Because as with something like this, with this color green, you can use this for a variety of things. I mean, this would be good for Christmas trees, it would be good for wreaths, grass, trees, flowers, the greenery on flowers, any kind of foliage. So it's a really good thread to have. So let's see. So we have, let's see. I believe I just got a package from UPS. All right. So let's see. Let me look and see. Pam says, Oh, Pam says, thank you for sharing your favorite threads for treetops in your email this morning. You're very welcome. So yes, for those of you who are subscribers to my weekly email, there is a list of threads that I like to use, some really good greens that I like to use in both Karen Collection and Threadworks. So if you haven't had a chance to check your email yet, you might want to do that. And if you're not on my weekly email list, then I'll tell you what, let me do this. Let me hop over here and share that link with you inside of the chat box so that you can go and sign up, because I always share little extra things inside, or at least I try to share little extra things inside of my weekly emails. So you're very welcome. All right, so Ruth says that she plans to use this stitch with variegated Gloriana. That'll be very pretty. There's some gorgeous colors in Gloriana silk thread too, so that's another really nice thread to use to stitch foliage, treetops, wreaths, Christmas trees, that kind of thing. And Ruth says she missed the name of the stitch. The name of the stitch is the Damask Stitch, and it is over on the Serendipity Needleworks website. So that's serendipityneedleworks.com. So you can pop over there and read that. And again, let me show you just one more time. Here is, for those of you that may be just now joining us, this is the stitch. Whoop, wrong way. This is the stitch right here. It's the Damask Stitch. So if you wanted this to have full coverage, I would just suggest using all 6 strands of the Threadworks cotton floss. I think 2 more strands in the needle will give you the full coverage that you're trying to achieve. And of course, if you're working on 18 count canvas, I recommend 4 strands for basket weave to give you good coverage on 18 mesh canvas. If you're trying to achieve full coverage using a stitch that's more open like this, then you would want to obviously increase the number of strands that you use. And that's going to be up to each individual. You would want to do that, test on a doodle canvas like I've done here, and you would want to, make sure that you've got the coverage like you want on your doodle canvas before you start to work on your regular painted canvas. Something to be aware of though is that it's not going to show up nearly as much, that there's canvas showing through if you have a painted canvas and you're stitching this on a green painted background. This stitch is going to look like you've got much better coverage if this was green canvas behind, or if I were actually stitching this sample on a painted canvas, you wouldn't be able to see through like you can on this white. So I like to show I like to do samples, my stitch samples on white canvas, so you can see what kind of coverage you would get, and it does show you that you can see through that. Yeah, there you go. Okay, all right. Let's see. So Sandy says the email has a link to the blog post. Is this week's blog post the Threadventure post? Yes, it sure is. So good question. So yeah, we have for the next 3 weeks, we have the blog on Serendipity Needleworks website. The post each week for the next 3 weeks will be about new gardens that we'll be visiting. So we have 3 more weeks on our spring garden tour, and then we'll switch gears and do something different. But yes, so you can go to the Serendipity Needleworks website, and let me just do that really fast so I can show y'all. Am I there? I think I'm not there. Wait, let me go. Here we go. All right, so this is the Connect With Us page. So what you would do is you would just go down here and you would fill in your name and your email address, and that'll get you signed up for the email. So you put your name and email address and then click Sign Me Up, and you will be all set. So when you go to the home page, you can see there's a couple of things that I probably should point out to y'all. The Threadventure is up here in the navigation bar, and if you want to see all the Threadventure posts for 2020, just click on that and it'll take you to all of the posts, and they're going to show up in the order in which they were most recently posted. So in other words, you're going to have to go backwards to get to the very first one, and that's going to be under older posts. So you can find, here is the very first one, Spring Fever. That's the very first one talking about the Threadventure that we were getting ready, or that we are getting ready to do. And here's week 1. And then you can continue to find your way through by finding the other posts. Now, again, we are working on trying to get the other Threadventures tagged properly. Not getting that done very quickly. So all you have to do is go up to the search bar in the top right hand corner of the website and then type in Threadventure, and it'll pull up all the different Threadventures that we've done, and you can just scroll through and find whatever and read whatever happens to catch your eye. So easy way to go back and go through. We've had wait a minute, let me think. We've had the original Threadventure, the winter Threadventure, and then this is the spring Threadventure. So yeah, we've only had 3 that are accessible to everyone on the website. So, all right. Let's see. And Ruth says she's 1 hour from Longwood Gardens, a must on the bucket list. I agree. I've never been there, but I definitely can see how it would be a place you could spend a lot of time. It looks absolutely beautiful. So, all righty, y'all. It is 3:30. Time for me to call it an afternoon so I can pop over and do some canvases with our members of the Stitchers Club. Thank you ever so much for being here with me this afternoon. Again, if you're watching as a recording, if you have questions, please leave them in the comments box, or after we sign off, if you think of a question that you'd like to ask, come back and type it in the comments box, and I will do my best to get that answered for you ASAP. Thanks for joining me. Have a terrific rest of your day, and until next week, happy stitching. Bye for now.